Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, where we come to transform ourselves and each other and the world. It is so good to be together this morning. Let's take a moment to, just for now, unmute ourselves, turn your audio on so we can all hear each other say hello and give each other greetings.
Good
Hello.
Good morning.
Hello,
Everybody.
Good
morning.
Good morning.
Lovely day.
Good morning.
Yes,
Hello,
beautiful sunny day.
Ooh.
and the top of the day to you all.
I think we're getting better at this Zoom
Just good
stuff.
to remember there really are people
You
out
are,
there.
you
We're
are.
all here listening and watching and being together. You can see the order of service by following the link in the chat and follow along with what's going on that way. And there's several announcements there. Also a link to the website so you can see lots more of what's going on this week. The memorial service for Bryce Perry will take place on Zoom this afternoon at 2 p.m. The link for that service is in your order of service, and the password is one word, cowboy hat. Cowboy hat. So join us there, please, to celebrate Bryce's life and grieve his loss together. If you've been getting those calls that are going out to every member and you enjoy them, you can enjoy another one or three or four by signing up to make them. Anybody can do that. We could use some more callers, so click on that link to email Melissa if you'd like to have some interesting conversations with folks in church. And now, let us begin our service. Will you join me in the words and gestures of our family chalice lighting, if you know how they go? If not, follow me and you'll know next time. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism, the church of the open mind, helping hands, and loving hearts. With our centering words each week, we draw on one of the sources of our living tradition. Today's words come from the poet Shole Wope. Here come the octopi of war, tentacles, wielding guns, missiles, holy books, and colorful flags. Don't fill your pens with their ink. Write with your fingernails. Scratch light upon these darkened days. Let us follow the sound of the bell into silence and arrive here in our shared space fully. Let's join in singing with Bruce, "Oh, I Woke Up This Morning." The words are here in your order of service.
this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I was walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I was singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Last week's stuffed animal sleepover was so much fun. Let's show some of our favorite photos from the sleepover. Dr. Sharpie, can you start the slideshow, please?
I wish we could have a sleepover at UUCPA every week so I could see my stuffed animal friends.
Yes, it's sad that we can't see our stuffy friends every week, but think about the UUCPA humans. Because of COVID-19, they won't get to see their human friends at UUCPA for months.
Well, it's very nice then that we can show them all their favorite places at UUCPA. And it's nice that we get to drink hot chocolate for them.
Remember when Penguin spotted the trash and we were worried that Trash Man would appear?
Thank goodness, Eco Justice Avenger showed up in time to prevent that. Ms. Bear, do you think we'll be able to have another stuffed animal sleepover at UUCPA?
Oh yes, of course, dear.
We're coming to my favorite part of the sleepover.
You mean playing red light, green light?
No, my favorite part was the evening worship service. I felt so peaceful afterwards.
It's fun looking at these photos. I'll be talking with Amy and Dan to figure out a time for another sleepover.
I can't wait until we have another stuffed animal sleepover.
Now is our time for sharing the sorrows and joys of our lives. So if you have something that you'd like to share with everyone, please post it in the chat. I'll share it aloud from there. Or you can email it to joyconcern@uucpa.org, and I'll check there too in real time. Let's take a moment to hold what we've heard. Deep sorrows, joys, mixed feelings like moving away on a new adventure. And just feel the complexity of life, of sharing this life with people who are in very different places than we may be right now. Joyous when we are sorrowing, and the other way around, and how special it is that we can carry one another's joys and concerns with such compassion, that we are never alone, regardless of what we are feeling. Let us hold especially those who are suffering in a moment of prayer. And blessed be. Let us now sing together.
We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
Our first reading comes from the writer and abolitionist Frederick Douglass. I have made one change to his language, substituting people in a place where he wrote men. The whole history of the progress of human liberty shows that all concessions yet made to her august claims have been born of earnest struggle. The conflict has been exciting, agitating, all-absorbing, and for the time being, putting all other tumults to silence. It must do this, or it does nothing. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact amount of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue till they are resisted with either words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. Our second reading comes from Emmanuel Acho, who records his thoughts on video.
So consider this a safe space to answer so many questions that I've seen from y'all. The first question I've seen a lot of, Emmanuel, why are y'all rioting? I understand protesting, but why riot? And to that I submit this. MLK said that rioting is the language of the unheard. For years, black people have tried peacefully protesting, going back to 1965 and before with the Selma March, and that didn't work. And then in 2016, Colin Kaepernick, he took a knee, and that agenda got moved to a flag, which was never the goal. He just wanted to raise awareness on social injustice. So that didn't work. And so now we've seen riots because black people and hurt people are trying to get the attention of the oppressor. They're trying to raise awareness of the oppression. I was biking around Lake Austin the other day, and there was a white girl about 15 meters ahead of me. And as I'm on my bike, I say to her, on your left, because I want to notify her I'm coming so that she can change her course of action. I get 10 meters away and I increase my voice, on your left, because she had yet to move. I get 5 meters away and she's still there, and I say, on your left, because I realize if she doesn't change her course of action, there will be a collision. And as I approach her, I yell, on your left, and we collide. My goal was never to hit her, but because she had her headphones in, she didn't hear me, and so she didn't change her course of action. I believe that that's the same thing black people are doing now. 1960s, we're yelling, we're oppressed. But the course of action wasn't changed. And so we again yell, we're oppressed, but the course of action wasn't changed. And so again we yell, we're oppressed. And now you see the collision that's occurred in America.
The choir will now join us with the anthem, Everything Possible.
We've cleared all the and the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love, you leave behind when you're done.
Young people, people of color, transgender people oppressed by police violence and discrimination found the limit of their endurance and fought back. And it was called a riot. I'm speaking not of the protests that have erupted across the country since the Memorial Day murder of George Floyd, but the Stonewall Rebellion that began on this day, not long past midnight on June 28, 51 years ago. Along with the obvious parallels, this story has some instruction for us on how change comes about and what we can do to make it come about in the ways we would hope to see. Maybe you didn't learn about Stonewall in history class. I sure didn't, despite growing up in one of the most liberal regions of the country. So I'll fill you in a little. In 1969, in 49 states, it was illegal to commit homosexual acts. The vast majority of US Americans polled viewed LGBT people with disgust and moral disapproval. The most charitable interpretation popular at the time of non-heterosexual orientations and non-cisgender identities was that they were mental illnesses, meriting compassion and a cure. Congress had only less than 20 years before seen fit to pass, and the president had seen fit to sign a law making it illegal for gay people to work in the federal government. So, in 1969, the year after I was born, that recently, people of non-normative sexual orientations and gender identities were denied love, work, children, and a chance to be treated with dignity and respect. They lived their lives in secret, in hiding, and often in a shameful tumult of self-loathing. It was hard to find community with people who understood them and were like them. But people will always seek out, people like themselves will seek out support and understanding. And in New York City, that happened mostly in bars. Gay bars, like many bars in the city, were run by the mafia oftentimes. And bars that were frequented by gay and transgender and transvestite and lesbian patrons were regularly raided by the police because it was illegal to gather in that way. The cops would look the other way if bribed often enough. In other words, the patrons were victims of extortion and violence by the police. There was nothing special about the Stonewall Inn on Christopher Street in Greenwich Village. It was actually kind of a dump, but people of various identities and orientations could meet there at considerable expense and a lot of risk. There are various legends about what happened that night. Some people are alive who still remember it and have recorded the story in many interesting documentaries. If you want to learn more about it, do not watch the feature film Stonewall. It goes right out of the realm of legend and into whitewashed fantasy land. But what seems pretty clear is this. The police raided, trying to line people up against the wall and strip them to check their genitals, count whether they wore 3 items of clothing that in the police's view were appropriate to somebody with those genitals. It had happened so many times. This time, to quote one historian of the event, the queers fought back. The police dragged a lesbian named Stormé Delaravie to the paddy wagon. As she was being arrested for being too butch, too masculine, in today's words, genderqueer, she yelled to the crowd, "Why don't you guys do something?" And people began to throw things, certainly pennies and some rocks. Legend says bricks, but that's doubtful. They screamed epithets at the police. They resisted arrest. They formed several kick lines, Rockette style, and sang bawdy songs. They were singing for their lives. In this uprising, people of color, young people, transgender and genderqueer people led the way. Now, sometimes this is called the beginning of the LGBT rights movement. It wasn't the beginning. There have always been people of a variety of genders and sexual orientations in all cultures. And sometimes they have been met with expulsion, torture, and death. And sometimes they have received respect, even reverence, as for two-spirit people who are hailed as shamans and wise guides and leaders in some communities. We know that people have always had a variety of ways of expressing gender and sexual desire. And there is nothing new about the struggle for recognition, rights, and respect. Zooming in on the 20th century in the United States, 3 years before Stonewall, right here in San Francisco, there was the Compton's Cafeteria riot, when people who had gathered at one of the chain Compton's cafeterias in San Francisco's Tenderloin district, who used to hang out there, had enough of being harassed by the owners and the police who would come running when the owners complained of their taking up too many tables and being their transgender, transvestite, and queer selves there in the cafeteria. And they too fought back. That was in 1966. And going back a ways, in 1924, we had the founding of what appears to have been the first open gay rights organization in our country. The United States government shut it down the next year. So Stonewall wasn't the first. It was a spark. The growing tinder pile of oppressed lives, suppressed dreams, all the things that pile up when one cannot live, work, raise children, have a family, have a community that one needs. It had spark after spark falling onto it, and this one, June 28th, 1969, it caught. How does change happen when it happens? This is a constant question, something we need to know if we are a people who gather to transform ourselves and each other and the world. We want change to happen in certain ways that we see as necessary, so we need to know what brings it about, finally. Well, things are changing right now, we hope, especially in the matter of racial justice and police brutality. It appears that the spark is violence. Look at the NFL. They have finally said, we need to address the violence against people of color, the injustice of the way policing is done in this country. They didn't say it when Colin Kaepernick kneeled. They said it only this past month. They didn't respond to peaceful protest, but something shifted. Now, who is committing the violence? Probably a lot of different people, and we will never know. Definitely, sometimes it's the police. We have that on tape in numerous cases, as well as attested to by numerous witnesses. Sometimes it's white supremacists itching to start a race war, as if we weren't already fighting one. Sometimes it's opportunists just seeking the chance to move into a chaotic moment to break windows and steal things. And no doubt some violence is committed by protesters. The language we use about what is going on in these violent moments reveals a lot. As Stormy DeLarvery said of Stonewall, it was a rebellion. It was an uprising. It was a civil rights disobedience. It wasn't no damn riot. In other words, it was violence with a purpose. It seems that The turning point there, and the turning point that we appear to be in, we hope we are in now, uphold Frederick Douglass's dictum, power concedes nothing without a struggle. The struggle is right out on top now, and power may at last, be conceding something. There's a serious conversation about policing. There's legislation about both police and about various other racial issues. Time will tell whether this moment really makes a difference or whether another spark still needs to fall. There's a lot of new knowledge out there among people who have lived fairly immune from police violence and the constant discrimination and disrespect shown for certain strata of our society, who are now unable to avoid the evidence. I learned something new myself from someone who heard my June 7th sermon, the one called The Wounds of Our People. I learned that half the people killed by police are people with disabilities in this country. With 20 to 25% of us having disabilities, that's more than double the rate that one would expect from the population. I did not know that. I apologize for my inexcusable ignorance, and I just wonder what I will learn next. With so much in churn, it is a constant learning experience. We are in a time, we hope, of change. And when there is change like this, accompanied by violence, people who speak of human rights, who speak words of justice and peace, principles like ours of peace, liberty, and justice for all, often our voices are decrying the violence. I'm not saying we should go out supporting a violent uprising, but we have to ask ourselves, would power have conceded anything without violence and the threat of violence? This is a difficult place for would-be pacifists to find themselves. With due caution about the metaphor of parenting, I want to draw on that aspect of my life for a moment. I apologize for the metaphor and its limits because, of course, I don't intend to suggest that oppressed people are children and their oppressors are parents. I'm just aware of a power dynamic and how it plays out in parenting, so bear with me. I'm thinking about the fact that we ask things of our child. Let's be honest, we make demands of her. We have a certain amount of power in that relationship. And she generally delivers peaceably and fairly promptly when we ask her for something. Why does she do that? We had an interesting conversation about this just recently. She's 13 now, and we could have interesting conversations about why do things work the way they do between us and in our family? Well, it seems clear that the reason that things go along pretty peacefully is that we have a social compact. We have a contract of mutual respect. She knows that the things we're asking are pretty reasonable. If we can't give a good reason why you should do this or that household chore when, everybody would rather do something more fun than a household chore, well, then she might balk. But we're pretty reasonable, and she's reasonable too. We see that there's a mutually respectful community being built there. Now, what if we didn't have that respect? What would she do then? Well, we could still probably get her agreement by threatening force, by threatening punishment. We're going to take that phone away. You're going to be grounded. I guess that doesn't really work right now. Everybody's grounded. And, many people hit their children or threaten to. And force works too in getting people to do what you want them to do. It works until it doesn't. For example, people who out and out abuse their children into doing what they want them to do, they're usually quite successful until the kids get big enough, strong enough, and confident enough to fight back and realize, you know what, I can hurt my parent as well as their ability to hurt me. No, I think it's better to have the respectful compact that we have. But that's not what we have had in this society when it comes to race relations. For example, and you can find, I can direct you to many recordings of this, oftentimes police simply bully people, especially white police, with people of color. They demand respect, in their words. Really, they mean deference, or something even more slavish than that, and I use that word deliberately. Just walking through the neighborhood or driving by, they call out, "What are you looking at?" to someone who's just talking with friends on his own front stoop, demanding that the person put their eyes down and speak meekly in order to show respect. The respect is not mutual. There is no social compact there. It's built on force. Without an agreement that demands are reasonable and the parties respect each other, you get a new level of struggle. You get violence. You get violence that is just under the surface being met by open violence. I would like to believe that purely nonviolent resistance works. And you can look at examples where it has worked amazingly well, including in our own country, in the civil rights movement. Amazingly disciplined, nonviolent resistors, able to stay peaceful even as they were being beaten by police with batons, even as they were being attacked by fierce dogs and knocked over with the force of fire hoses. And so Martin Luther King is held up as an example of how we can organize a movement of nonviolent social change. All of those things, they pricked the conscience of the nation and urged the president, LBJ, and the Congress into movement. But it has to be noted that while these nonviolent protesters were working, they had other organizations alongside them. Malcolm X was standing behind Martin Luther King, in the minds, surely, of President Johnson, in the minds of the people watching these nonviolent protests. The movement spoke softly, but others were right there carrying a big stick. So is that why it worked? Is it because people in power thought, if we don't deal with people now, if we don't respond to Colin Kaepernick while he is kneeling, we're going to have to respond to people who are burning things in the streets? Is that why it worked? In part, probably. And now that the Voting Rights Act that was brought about by those protests has been all but repealed, now what will work? The lesson from our relationship with our daughter and from Emmanuel Acho, who spoke to us so eloquently, is if quiet requests work, that's all that will be needed. If words make a difference, words will be enough. That happens in a relationship of mutual respect and care. If words are not enough, if they are met with disrespect, if they're ignored, if they're met with mockery and violence, things will escalate. For many, many years, for generations, people of color, immigrants, people with disabilities have lobbied and spoken and begged and shouted, "Why don't you do something?" Douglas's struggle that he speaks of, the struggle without which power concedes nothing, as he says, it can be a moral struggle. It doesn't have to be a physical one. And that's where those of us who are generally spared the direct effects of oppression come in. The moral struggle is in the heart. When someone says, "Why don't you do something?" Change can happen right then, right there. Power can make a concession. Those who are holding power and those who just benefit silently by others exerting power on their behalf. Change can happen in the heart with no physical struggle, no violent uprising, but if we balk at the moral struggle, if we are not moved by people asking politely and then urgently, "Do something," then we are more likely to face a physical struggle. We can only expect violence in response to the violence committed day after day in our name and by our paid officers. I mean here, by our people like me, people who carry a lot of privilege in this community by virtue of our color and our culture. And you know, if there is a physical struggle, the moral struggle must still be completed. You don't get out of it. William Penn said, to delay justice is injustice. Or as Martin Luther King put it, justice delayed is justice denied. We will have to repair the damage caused by injustice, and the longer it goes on, the greater the damage. It is so heartbreaking to read about Stonewall, to think about the progress of the last 51 years, and think about those who lived and died before they got their rights. And now that perhaps at last change is happening in this country regarding police brutality, regarding racism, there's the heartbreak of every hashtagged name. Those who have died and will still die at the hands of the police, who will suffer from our official bigotry against people with disabilities and people of color before we finally stop delaying. As Douglas said, find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact amount of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them, and these will continue till they are resisted with either words or blows or with both. Change happens either when the witnesses, the vast silent crowd, stops being silent, stops being complicit, and instead recognizes the quiet submission and says no more to the injustice and wrong imposed upon their neighbors. Or change happens when the people being oppressed endure no more and rise up. At Stonewall, it took an uprising to awake the conscience of a nation. The struggle is not over, and LGBT rights and acceptance and celebration proceeded to this point by fits and starts, but there is no question that we have come a very long way in 1 or 2 generations. Now, once again, people of color, especially black people, are shouting, "Why don't you do something?" What will it take to awaken our consciences now? Grateful for all that we receive from this community, and in support of all that it does for us and others in the wider community, we now give our offering and receive the benefits of generosity. The order of service gives a QR code and a link, and also information on how you can use text to give via Give Lively. If you're visiting us for the first time, please, you are our guest. Just enjoy the music. Let us sing together with Bruce's leadership, I'm on my way. Now, the version of this traditional song that we are singing, which we're using because this version is in the public domain, is a little different than the one you may know from our hymnal. The words are in the order of service. Let us go forth from this place, carrying with us the divine spark of compassion and connection to one another. Let us bring it to all that we meet, in person, on the telephone, or online, and spread the love and good news of a justice-seeking faith wherever we go. Let us now say our benediction together. I invite you to unmute yourself. Go ahead and turn on your video. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. And please stay after the benediction. We'll be randomly assigned to breakout rooms so we can chat a little bit. If you want to move to another room after a while, come back to the main room, and the host who will be there can send you to a new one. The rooms will stay open for about 15 minutes. Now, let us say our benediction together. Go out the world
in peace.
be of
Good
hold fast
good is good.
turn
Evil for evil.
and
And the faint-hearted.
Or
For the weak.
help
Suffering.
rejoice
beauty.
Love.
Word.
All beings.
Amen.